Hello everyone, welcome back to the TJOmega channel for day 1085 of our daily content grind. I don't know how many of you are getting sick of me reminding you how long it's been every single time, but I'm starting to get proud of the number. So I'm going to be honest with you, I'm a little out of sorts today. Poor sleep on top of what I assume was mild food poisoning yesterday. And a very long evening means I'm exhausted. I am completely out of it. So I needed something easy to do today. I need something simple that we can just sit here, talk about, and enjoy and share an experience together. And fortunately, I had a recent Patreon request that actually gives me a way of doing this. So one of the things I like to do on this channel is look back at an obscure Transformers toy line that very few people remember or talk about anymore. And this one certainly applies, though I don't think people forgot about it as much as rejected the memory. This is Animorphs. So, if you don't know, if you're not a reader, if you've never been to like a scholastic book event at a school, Animorphs is a line of books about teens that can metamorph into animals in order to fight off alien invaders. And this is a book series that ran for like over 20 books in the overall story. The overall like final story gets kind of insane. But point being, extremely popular book series. Popular enough that in 1998 they decided to do a television show on Nickelodeon based on it. And at the time, of course, if you were going to create a TV show that's all about shape-shifting into animals, of course you're going to ask the company that had been putting out animals for a year or two prior to this. Like, of course you're going to ask the Transformers people to actually handle this. So while this is branded as the Animorphs toy line, the Transformer logos and labeling do appear on the packaging. So this is an actual Transformers toy line. Consider it's the first crossovers or the first collaborative Transformers series ever. You know, as this is, the first time that the brand opened itself up to somebody else's brand. It's kind of it's historic in that way, unfortunately. So the most exposure most of my audience is going to have to Animorph toys is going to be the Beast Wars Mutants. So these, pretty well known at this point, these were intended to be a future wave of deluxes for Animorphs, where they switched gears going from teenager transforming into Beast turning into Beast. Now, when the Animorphs line died out, they decided, okay, we've already got these molds in production, let's not let them go to waste. So they retooled the heads to be more mechanical, and they depicted them as Beast Wars characters with no robot mode. You know, for whatever reason, they mutated and got stuck into one beast mode into another. I think it produced some of the more creative and interesting toys in Beast Wars. And had the line continued, I really wouldn't have minded getting a few more of these. In fact, there were plans. Had this gone well, we would have actually seen a few more. For instance, a frog that turns into a hornet, a ram that turns into a Komodo dragon, and a vulture that turns into a piranha. These all sound like really cool toys. Like, I actually, unironically, really like the Beast Wars Mutants. Like, I do think they are fascinating figures. So, the fact that we had 3 more that could have existed is kind of upsetting. It really makes me wish that the Animorph line had continued, if only for the sake of those. But unfortunately, there's reasons why it didn't, and we do need to kind of go over them. So, for those who are completely uninitiated to Animorph toys, this is what a deluxe looked like. So, the idea here was that the beast modes kind of took the focus. Rather than being bulky enough to actually accommodate for a robot transforming out of it, they tried a lot harder to make sure the beasts in this line were more detailed, more anatomically correct, because they really wanted to get the animal part of the Animorphs correct in this case. But that means Cassie here, unfortunately, did not go through the transition very well. They all have kind of the similar aesthetic, where in their human mode, they are they're already starting the transformation process. They have texture and sculpting to indicate that their clothing is being ripped. I don't know why, because most animals they transform into are smaller than their clothes. And they make it very clear that the clothes transform along with the kids as they shapeshift. So I'm not sure this is exactly accurate to how the books work, but suffice to say, they kind of went for this, like werewolf treatment of like bursting out of clothes with the sculpting. They all had this in between. Well, a lot of them, not all of them, but some of them had this in between mode where they wanted to recapture the idea of like the kids transforming into the creatures. Like if you see the cover of the books, that gradual shift from one form to the other, they wanted to capture that as a toy, which means they brought back Beast Wars mutant heads for this, but instead of representing this mutated head that's supposed to be more monstrous, and they instead had this halfway in between transformation thing, to varying degrees of success. The toys themselves tended to be kind of flat and boring. So for instance, here's Marco as a gorilla. Gorilla toys and Transformers always kind of struggle because, well, how much can you really do with a gorilla? You're turning a humanoid into a humanoid. So this toy kind of falls victim to that. And it's just kind of dull. We had plenty of transforming gorillas that were better than this by now. This was just kind of a sad take on that. This is where in the images you can more easily see the idea of like the ripped shirt and all that. And turning into a gorilla, that actually makes sense. Gorillas are huge. So this one I will actually give you. I don't know what is up with the mutant head, the in-between head, because it just kind of looks like a smaller monkey head. Again, I guess that's what you get. Fortunately, Marco actually had the opportunity to have a secondary toy. A few of these characters actually managed to get more than one, Marco being one of the fortunates. And Marco had this beetle in Wave 2. So, again, we're getting into this, like, the bug parts have to remain because, where else are you going to put them on a human mode? But one thing that you can see here that I will give the line credit for, the beast modes look stunning sometimes. That's a really cool looking beetle. I like the colors. I like the paint and sculpting to it. Like this, every now and then on these Animorphs, they put some genuine effort into making at least the beast modes look really, really cool. Like I will give like that. I am nothing if not a fair reviewer. If it's doing something right, I will point it out, even if it's a toy line I despise. But at the very least, this worked really, really nicely. As opposed to this. Rachel's Deluxe was actually lined up for a Plastic Addict episode, and if I can ever get the time of day to actually script those again, might still end up there, because she is one of the worst examples. So, as a result of them trying to double use the mane as her human hair, she is left with this permanent 80s hair metal perm. And it looks absurd, especially because you can't get rid of the cat ears. Those are permanent. Aside from that, she does have some weird aesthetic to her, like her arms going from like bare skin to hairy and then back to skin again. And she is rather anorexic as lions go. She's exceptionally scrawny. You will also note she's turning into a male lion. So she's swapping genders when she transforms. This is so like you can just see like she's gonna get along with Tigatron. Great. This is also gonna bring up another part where these toys kind of failed, is that there's really nothing going with them. Like the only accessory a lot of these deluxes came with were the little like leeches that were in the show, the Yergs. They all came with one of those, but that was literally it for the accessories. They didn't have any kind of weaponry. They didn't have anything special. And they also had something that you're going to notice here. You ask me, where do those gigantic lion forearms go in the robot mode or human mode? They don't. They're gloves. The gorilla use gloves too. A lot of them do. Yeah, so 1998, and we're part forming We're back to 80. We're back to the 80s Seeker mold, where you just have to keep these gloves separate and hope you don't lose them, because then you're out your toy. Let's continue, shall we? Here's Axe, and Axe is a little bit different. Axe is one of the Andalite aliens from the books, and he's the ally one. So his in-between head is actually kind of genuinely a mutant head. It's his alien form. The panther kind of looks sick. It's a pretty beefy take on a panther, but I will give that one credit again. It looks cool. This one is actually one of the very rare retools in this toy line because it's actually designed after Jake's tiger figure, which in robot mode looks so messy. There's so many parts hanging off of him. This is again where I kind of realize why things in Transformers work for this, because when the robot mode can look however you want it to look, the beast can blend in a lot better. And it's why robotic beasts work so much better, because once you transform, there's no clashing aesthetic. Here, if this was a completely robotic design in Beast Wars, I wouldn't mind, like the head halves kind of divided over like that, the paneling over the front of the shoulder. As far as like looking like warrior armor, that would actually look really good. But in the context of this is supposed to be a human being, having all of these like tiger parts hanging off and around him just looks really, really odd and breaks any kind of immersion. The tiger looks cool. It's super beefy. It's a very powerful looking creature. Don't know what's going on with the in-between head. He looks like he's telling you to get off his lawn. He looks like Freddy Krueger with hair implants. But he did have other toys. There is also a grizzly bear. And frankly, yeah, if you just wanted like a grizzly bear toy, you could do far worse. There's actual decent articulation in that beast mode. It's like, again, the beast mode seems to be where the focus was, and then the human was whatever. Human was just whatever. All these guys all had the same denim shorts, if you couldn't tell. Everyone was rocking denim shorts in this toy line. That's just what they had to work with. I mean, I can relate. I live in denim shorts most of the time. Now, Jake also had a third toy. However, this one is only available in Europe, and it was a Stingray. And it's such a rare toy that these are like the only visual examples I can actually find of it. And yeah, it's a pretty cool one. Like I will admit, like it looks better than some of them do. I think that's because it's a lot of shell. I think it's because he could hide a lot of himself inside the shell. But I do find it interesting that even when they had all that shell to work with, they still have like the beast elements down the arms, which when they're completely unnecessary for the transformation. So I think that might just be that case. At that point, it might just been like, well, that's the aesthetic now. We're just gonna go with it. So that's another one. If you have that one, then you've got a toy worth like hundreds if it's still sealed. It's like some of the only valuable things out of this line. I mean, admittedly, there's Animorph fans who still stick to these, so it's not like they're like dead of value, but certainly not what some Beast Wars toys are. There's one other one that is exclusive to Europe, and this is where we start getting weird. This is where the line starts getting really interesting. This is Taxxon. Taxxon, one of the evil aliens from the series, and yeah, this is a very different aesthetic. I'm not even sure I can see arms in his alien mode. They're all alien modes. I almost thought this was like a full deluxe sized Yerg, but the design is not quite right for it. What it makes me realize is that if they had done retracts this way, where like all of that shell just kind of like collapsed into what would it be, like a big like hunchback or backpack for the beast, for the robot mode, hunched over like that, he would have looked so much cooler. That character would have looked so much cooler. Again, exceptionally rare toy. One that most are not likely to ever find, but if you got it, congrats. It's a bit of a grail. And then there's one more deluxe we have to talk about, and of course, if you've been following the channel long enough, you've been waiting for this one. Hello, Tobias. This is the Animorph toy I featured on Plastic Addict because, frankly, it's just one of the most boring things I've ever seen called a Transformer, and has a lot of basic flaws, like human hands in the Hawk mode, just like there. And then, yeah, he kind of looks like me. Granted, that was a decade ago. I put on age and weight since then, so maybe not as true today as it was at the time. But it was still weird, and it made for a funny hook for a video. That said, the whole gimmick of Tobias in the Animorph books, if you haven't read, is that he's stuck in his hawk mode. So I think Hasbro saw that and decided they really wanted to push the character, thinking he would be a popular character or wanting to just produce a more accurate representation of his beast mode. He actually got something rare, which is a Mega Class toy for one of the human characters. From what I've been told, this is actually a substantially better action figure than the Deluxe. It's not one I have ever actually held or messed with, though, so I cannot say for sure. He looks better. He's not making some of the basic mistakes that the Deluxe made, so I will give it credit for that. His in-between head is hysterical, by the way. But no, like, we actually got Mega Classes, so we kind of patterned this off of what Beast Wars was doing. So there are no Scout Class toys, no basics, but we did get Deluxes, and now we're into the Megas. And the big feature of the Megas were the Andalite characters, which includes Axe. And these are where you actually get some interesting toys. And this is like the realm of Animorphs that was the most popular, because with the alien aesthetic, you could just kind of make the beasts match that aesthetic, and guess what? They actually felt more like real Transformers when you did that. More than that, even weirder is the fact that we had centaurs, alien centaurs as Transformers. I'm sorry, that's just kind of cool. I'm sorry. Like I said, I will give this line credit where I can. This was actually pretty neat. This gives you some really good variety in the line, and this genuinely produced some interesting toys that people actually really liked. We need villains. So far, the only villain I have mentioned is that little slug. So let's introduce Visser 3. Again, Andalite alien for his, quote, robot mode. That beast mode, that alien mode, that whatever that thing is mode. That is mean looking. That's terrifying looking. Again, these were the interesting things. This felt like where the designers and the engineers actually got to play and experiment and produce something that was really unique, but still felt like a Transformer. Kind of cool. They flexed their muscles a little bit. The one they showed off on is when we step up to the Ultra class. Visser 3 in this incredibly brutal looking alien. Now, it's the one on the lower left. That's the Andalite mode. That's his actual air quote robot mode. And then he just gets two different aliens to transform into. One very Raptor-esque, one kind of like Beast-esque. It's cool. I mean, it's a cool looking figure. Kind of messy in execution. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of parts hanging off a lot of places. But again, alien. You can kind of get away with that. So it's not entirely off. What was entirely off was the counterpoint, because there were two Ultra Class toys. The other one we had to endure was the Tri-Rex. This was another one I lined up for Plastic Addict, but this one would have been a lot of work. And it would have necessitated 2 other reviews, or 3 other reviews actually. Now, I will play devil's advocate again, and I will say that in my honest opinion, I think this is the best looking T-Rex that they did. Let me hear. This is a little bit off. Let me actually scroll this in so you can look at how cool it looks. Look at how cool that looks. I think that's way more interesting and vicious of a T-Rex than Beast Wars Megatron was. I actually really, really like how that looks. It looks like it's it looks like it's burning into ash. It's a really cool look. So that I'll give the Tri-Rex credit for that. And it was a pretty involved figure. There's stomping noises and a little bit of electronic effects in it. So that's actually a little bit cool. That's actually kind of cool. And then we get to the individual robots, which right now you see are just very small. So let me zoom in on Jake. who is mostly just a T-Rex head with limbs sticking out, and he looks like he's in pain. Oh, it's not a pleasant look. There's so much kibble on it. You know, you can see where they tried to like weaponize it and try to get something out of it that would kind of turn into a cool toy. It doesn't work, but they tried. Marco, I take it back. Marco looks like he's in pain. Like, it literally looks like his flesh is being ripped open and twisted in order to fill out this T-Rex. He looks like he's in agony. You're also getting nothing human in him. I think it's hysterical that it's this half-mutated head is like the only human part to him, and then like the collar of his shirt. Like the collar of his shirt and like Daisy Duke denim booty shorts. Like, I don't know what Marco was dressing for before he became part of the Tri-Rex, but I don't want to find out. And then, Cassie gets one too, and Cassie's probably the worst. So, like, the others, like, okay, cool. You got these monstrous arms because you have to be the T-Rex legs. But you know what? At least that, you know, you can make something out of that. How does Cassie function or operate in any capacity, in any shape or form? Like, her left arm and like is nothing but kibble, nothing but beast shell just hanging off of her. And then that tail is bigger than the toy. The tail is bigger than Cassie. It's so bad looking. It's so bad looking. Oh, but this is like the nice version. This is a nice version. Do you remember the concept art I showed you once upon a time? Too bad, you're gonna see it again. This is body horror. This is body horror. Like, no. No, this is gruesome. This is absolutely gruesome. This should not be a thing. This should not exist. And obviously they didn't come anywhere remotely close to this. And maybe for the best. Maybe for the best. So what you've seen is pretty much the entirety of the Hasbro produced Animorph toy line, and you can see that it's got a couple of interesting spots, but a lot of really dull toys with really poor aesthetic choices. But technically we aren't entirely done, because they did produce fast food Transformers for these as well. TFU.info, where I did have to pull some of these photos from because this toy line is so hard to find photos for. We've talked about them in the past. They're a great resource, so thank you very much for that. Thank you for having these available. They have these incorrectly listed as Happy Meal toys because that's just kind of like a generic catch-all term, the same way your mom kept calling it a Nintendo when it was an Xbox. No, these were actually released at Taco Bell. And when is the last time you heard of Taco Bell having kids' meal toys? And here they are. These are, again, kind of rare, so actual images of them in all the modes are kind of hard to come by. But it's fascinating. Now, aside from the fact that they did things like, you know, lizard, fly, like some things that they didn't do in the full toy line, they actually look human. I mean, I know it's because they're just wearing the beasts as shells, but maybe that was the right approach because they actually look human. You know, they actually look like the characters from the TV show. I don't know why there's a little clear dove that's supposed to be a hawk, that's supposed to be Tobias, with like his soul inside of it or something. It's a very weird choice. The Tobias toy is a very weird choice. But no, these things exist. And frankly, like, I've seen worse. I've seen worse from Transformers for them. I don't know if Hasbro produced these or not. Either way, it's just an interesting footnote to end the video on. So that's the entirety of the Animorph toy line. Everything that I could find, including a few things that didn't make it out. And you know what? Maybe for the best. Interesting as the mutant idea was, and cool as the Anidites, were, in a weird way, there's just so many flaws. There's so many basic mistakes, and the aesthetic to them is just not pleasant. So, not a big surprise these didn't last very long, but I'm sure there were people who enjoyed them because everyone's toy, every Transformer is somebody's favorite somewhere out there. So let me know in the comments below if you happen to, like, if you grew up with these, if there's any you had fond memories of. Well, if I'm being too harsh, I am willing to be told that. So that's just my opinion, though. So there we go. That is it for me today. As always, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.